Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
Hey, this is John Harris.
And this is Rob Bozovich.
And Endurance is for Everyone, and this is the Endurance for Everyone podcast. So, Chris, how you been doing?
I've been doing great.
Yeah,
I've had better years in running, but I'm doing great. Thanks.
Yeah. This is kind of why I wanted, as soon as we were all following you on the Vol State thing.
Yes.
So, you saw it, especially your biggest fan, Jenny. Cabezas, but this was, we were all following you, and so we saw what was going on, and and it's one of those things that I wanted to have you on to talk about it, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about it, so I was kind of giving you a little time.
I'm fine talking about it. There's nothing necessarily private or too personal. It's personal, but it's not beyond
Well, I think
polite discussion.
I think we agree on that. Is that I think even though it was a hard race, and a hard run, I think it helps people to see that people that do this all the time still have issues sometimes. And I think it does help people. I mean, I'm you know how I am on the show and everything. It's like I think people need to hear that people have problems, that everything's not perfect.
I agree. It's funny that you say that, and this is why I like Endurance for Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare that you have an audience and a group of people talking about training that relates to the audience. So often you hear about people talking about training, and it's how very extremely gifted, or people have been doing it for a long time, it's how they train, and they'll give tips and pointers, and those you can get wisdom from that. But in my experience, when I'm training, it doesn't apply to me. It's a different world to a mid-packer who's out on the course for a much longer time, and who's, shall we say, the problems that a mid-packer faces are different than the problems that an elite runner faces. And I can't run the mileage that an elite. You know what I mean? I mean, in other words, I guess what I'm saying is, we talk about what applies to us and how we do in the sport, and it's one of those things where, in my opinion, they're really, I don't want to sound like the guy who's saying everybody should get a trophy whether you win or lose or anything, but you could almost say there's no failure. I mean,
right.
If you don't finish a race, it's not necessarily a failure, because it's not necessarily about that race.
Right.
I mean, it's disappointment. Anyway, we could go on and on about that, but I think we can all agree that it's the process.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. And I was just talking to one of my other clients today kind of about that, is that they had a bad training run. And we've talked about this recently on the show. It's like, well, it's just today's. So just, it's over with. It really wasn't as bad as you thought when I look at the numbers and things like that. It's not as bad as you think it is.
Right.
But, they were almost like 40 seconds faster than when they started per mile. So it's like, you're not having bad runs. You felt bad. So you just put this one away and focus on the next one. And you know what? And if you go out there for a marathon, this person's not running a marathon, but if you go out there for a marathon and you have a bad race, well, then you learn what you can from what happened, and you go to the next one.
Exactly.
So, it's like you said, it's all a process. So
I don't see there being a beginning, a middle, or an end to anything that we do in this sport. I just see it. I don't even think of it as a sport, and that's what's different from someone like me than someone who's racing to win. Is it's recreation to me.
Right. It's something you like to do and you enjoy doing, or at least did for I don't know.
It's
where
a challenge.
I know where you're at mentally right now, but it does get old sometimes, and it's not. And that's what I liked. Not that I liked it, but what I and we'll get into it more. But with this recent race event you were doing, is it's okay to be mentally worn down sometimes. And I think it's like recognizing that you are worn down, and then you deal with it, and you make a decision based on that. And sometimes the decision is to stop, and sometimes you struggle through, and but that that happens. So
one of the hardest things, not only in this, I hate to say sport, but in this thing that we do, but in life itself, is trying to determine when you're being true to yourself and when you're not.
Right.
When you're doing something for someone else versus when you're doing something for yourself. And I think a lot of times, a lot of things can come to that. But at any rate, yeah, it's a lot more important to do what we do. Let me rephrase it. You have to do this for yourself, and you have to really want to do it in order to finish it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you don't even realize that want and that need to do it is not there until the middle of it.
Yeah, you think you're supposed to want it because you've wanted it for so long.
Yeah, right.
And something's broken if suddenly you don't.
Well, we're totally off the questions right now, but we'll get to them. But it's kind of like I'm trying to remember back when I was the show was called Fat Slow Triathlete for a little while, but my blog is called that. Yes. And you almost start living up to that. Okay, you're the back of the pack guy. So it's expected that I'm going to be in the back of the pack. And at what point does it be okay to not be in the back of the pack, I guess, because it's expected. And at what point, okay, I'm coaching people now and I'm still racing. Is it still you feel like almost like it's a requirement of me to get out there and race.
Right.
And
it's expected.
Right. And I had that feeling for a couple of years, and I think I burned out too. I really had to dial it back. Now I'm starting to get it back a little bit right now. I'm starting to get that feeling back that I want to do it again. But I dialed it back a lot the last couple of years. You saw it when you were here and we did that, that 7-mile walk that we did.
And I think it's important to say this since we've been talking about, I am not being pessimistic, and I'm not pessimistic about this. I know we'll get into it in more detail later, but I realize that just like in a race, when you're hurting very badly and you really want to quit, if you've done it a while, it's temporary. That feeling of despair is fleeting, and that it will pass if you just keep going.
Right.
I am not in despair at all. And I don't want anyone to think, oh boy, this is a pessimistic, view of things. It's really not. And it's acceptance. And I think part of ultra running is accepting. It's accepting pain. It's not fighting pain. It's accepting what the day gives you, what the trail gives you that day. You have to accept it and deal with it.
Right.
And with the knowledge that it's going to pass and you're going to be fine. So.
Right. Yeah. And that goes back to something Megan has told me and others have told me too, is that you're trying to run 100 miles or whatever I was doing at that point. It's going to hurt. You're going to be in pain at some point, so you just have to deal with it. You have to know that you have to know that going in. Anybody that runs 100 miles is going to be in pain.
Exactly.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're a fat guy like me, it might hurt faster. I might be in pain sooner than other people, but even guys, I mean, you're a lot smaller than I am, and you're still in pain. You're going to get hit it too. So everybody hits it. So, and I think that going in, you kind of accept it and understand it and just be ready for it, and and like you said, know it's going to pass.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I know you've been on the show before, but a lot of people may not have heard you. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? How'd you get into ultra running, and where did that come from? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think I've done some form of endurance sport for most of my life since I was pretty young, like preteen. I was on a swim team as a kid. Lived in Florida and did swim team. I also was very active in the Boy Scouts. So I also had a very outdoors, love of the outdoors. And then I went to a military college where, running was just part of the curriculum.
Which one did you go to?
Virginia Military Institute.
Okay, VMI. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's part of the curriculum. It was part of my life, but it was always something that had to be done for a different end. Like you just had to run because that was what you had to do, or you had to run in order to maintain some modicum of fitness. And so that's why you did it. And while I always ran, it was never a love necessarily.
Right.
But I ran, and even after college, and I had a pretty regular fitness regime, but never really enjoyed it. But then I had some challenges in life. I had a son who had some medical issues, and I had some real mental challenges in life, and I didn't exercise for a while. And then when I started doing it again, I just started running, and one day it just felt really good to run. And I didn't have a ride for dropping my car for the mechanic, so I just ran home. I think it was like 6 miles, and I died, but I really loved it. And I just wondered, how far could I run? And so each weekend I tried to run a little bit further, and then it got to the point where I realized, I needed water, and I was like, how am I going to solve this problem? And then I realized people had these packs you could wear, and I thought, I could carry water. And then I realized, I also had to eat. And I didn't really know that gels existed. And a friend of mine who was a cyclist told me about that. I basically just started discovering these things like all on my own, and I didn't really know, anything about it. And then I decided to run a marathon. And during that training, I heard of this guy named Kilian Jornet, and then I realized, he ran in the mountains in Spain where I loved, and I thought, people do that. You could do that. I really just was discovering this as I went, and then that was around 2012 or so. And then that's when I really got into ultra running. At that point, I was like punching through the marathon distance. I hadn't even finished my marathon training, and maybe at 2011, but I was already thinking I wanted to do, 100 milers,
Do you find yourself drawn more to the woods, I guess, as well?
Yeah. I really, I think trail running is where my heart really is. It's there's so much that we could talk about there with regards to, the benefits just, mentally and physically of running trails. But when I discovered that was a thing, I just fell in love. Like there was just no.
It's a totally different mindset, and I come from, the triathlon and road racing background. And when I first, I've only been doing trail runs for a couple of years now, and it's just a totally different psyche thing. I had the first long distance one I did was the Croom race a couple of years ago, and it was miserable. It was pouring rain the whole time, and it was 70 degrees when we started out, and it was 55 when we ended. So it went the opposite way than normally people do. It got colder as the day went on. Just pouring rain, and I had a great time.
Yeah.
And if I was on a triathlon or a normal road marathon or anything like that, I would have been miserable. But in the woods, I was fine. It was fun.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like bringing back the kid in you that you're just playing around in the woods,
Yeah, and I used to go hiking every summer. I used to spend, a week or more out on the Appalachian Trail as a vacation.
Nice.
That used to be sort of my personal vacation. And when you turn that into sort of this fast packing / running thing where you go out for days but run, it's just something is different about that. It's even that much more exciting.
So you started in like 2012 is I guess when you started. Did you start racing events at that point? Up to that point, it was basically just doing it on your own, right?
Yeah, I was, like I said, I'd always run regularly, but except for that stint where I fell out of shape a bit. But coming back into it, I'd spent sufficiently enough time out of those circles where I just wasn't keeping up with things, and I didn't even know this thing called ultra running. I was completely, I didn't really know people ran more than 26.2, so it's still really new to me. But the idea of it, of just how far could you run personally, just appealed to me. And whatever you call it, ultra running or not, the idea was running. And so, so that first ultra I did was a 50 miler. And, the whole idea was to run the whole thing. I think I pretty much did run the whole thing. And the idea when I was getting into it was ultra running, and I knew that part of training was walking fast and all this kind of stuff. But when I was getting into it, and this goes into some of my dissolution lately and everything, I think the whole idea was it was a race to be run. I mean, and you would walk if you had to, but 75 to 80% was was running. And I was actually a better runner when I was getting into it than I am now. But yeah, it was a 50 miler. The first one I did, it was right after my marathon, because I didn't even run the marathon anymore. I wanted to get into trail ultras. So you could say I was into ultra running before I even ran an ultra, because that's all I wanted to do. Like I wasn't, I was no longer, road racing and marathons no longer appealed to me. And, I was halfway to that goal and I was like, I don't even care about this marathon anymore.
Right, exactly. Well, I've kind of had to, I don't know if you've been listening, but I've just started training for the Disney Marathon, and this is something I haven't done since 2012. But it's like something that I just need to do to get the bad taste of the last one out.
Yes.
But honestly, I mean, yeah, I kind of want to do it. I always say I want to do it, but I'd much rather, be on the woods doing it, if I had the choice. Yeah. But it's just something I need to get out of my system, and then I'll move on,
I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things like that where it's like unfinished business.
Yeah. Right. It's unfinished business. And especially when your last one was not a good one. I finished in 2012, but, slow, and, I'm slow, but in 2013, I didn't finish. And that was the last one I attempted. I've done like 16-mile trail runs since then. I think that's the longest one, but I had this need that I need to give it another shot. And just show that I can do it. And I'll probably be fine after that. Because I know I'm not going to, I know when I'm out there, it's Disney, so it's a different kind of race. But I know I'll be miserable at 3 o'clock in the morning sitting in those damn corrals, freezing our butts off like we always do every year, every time. But, as the Disney race. But
are you going to do the one in April?
No.
Oh, I want to do that one because it's Star Wars.
That's the Star Wars one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client actually do it. She's her goal was to do, how they always have like the goofy, the dopey,
challenge.
The 5 to 10, the half, and the full.
Yes.
Her goal was to do all 4 races in all the Disney races.
Yeah.
So she did. She's done it so far. She did the first 2. So she did Star Wars, and now she's got Paris coming up. And then she'll end up with, and she's done it. I mean, Lord help her, but I couldn't do it. I back-to-back runs are not my thing, So
yeah.
So you've been out there. A few years now, So what would you say is like essential gear that you would need when you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and this is just my experience. Obviously, everyone's going to tell you something different, but I try and take it down to the very, very essential. You use the word essential.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gear that I could say would be cool to have, but essentially, I really believe that you need to have a pair of shoes that are a half size larger.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know they have to have shoes to run, or maybe they don't, but you might not realize that you probably are going to need to go half size larger. And that's for if you're doing like a 50 miler or more, because your feet are going to swell. And that's going to cause a lot of problems when you're halfway through the race and you're starting to get blisters, or they're protruding out of the top. And
you don't really
people cut their shoes open.
Yeah, I've seen that, and a lot of people don't realize how much your feet do swell in these things. And I know one person who recently. I mean, they would argue with me about that. I say, no, you got to go bigger. Well, it's too big. It might feel like it's swimming on me. I say, it won't be swimming on you in 20 miles. Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that question before, and people have asked me that question before. And I always just say, you really just need to think about your feet first of all. So like when you say gear, anything goes around your foot. If you have a drop bag, bring your half size larger shoes and put them in the drop bag halfway through or something.
That's a good idea. No, I have a drop bag question coming up, but
or a lot of people might put an insole in the bottom of the shoe and then take it out or something.
Okay.
Or wear 2 pairs of socks and then take 1 pair off or something. But I run in a half size larger pair of shoes regularly, and it doesn't bother me. I would also say though that you need to have a really good hydration system that works for you. I've tried all kinds of hydration systems, and my favorite really is a backpack with a reservoir in it.
Okay.
And that's because I need a lot of water and I'm out there a long time. I mean, you see the faster runners and they have handhelds or something. I don't like handhelds because I don't like stuff in my hands.
See,
a lot of people don't like backpacks.
I'm the same way, Chris. I was just talking about that too. It's like I hate holding things.
Exactly.
And so I'm the same way about that. I just want it out of my hands.
And if you want to carry your phone with a handheld, then you've got 2 hands with something.
Right.
Or you got to put on one of those waist belts, which I hate.
Not a fan
so
either.
I have a backpack for all occasions. And I would say that's your essential gear. Yeah, I mean, you don't need a GPS or whatever. You can get it, from an essential standpoint. That's all you need. You just need.
Well, and I won't give it away, Chris, but you'll be surprised how many people have said the same thing for that question.
Cool. Yeah.
So
it's
always shoes and water. And even then, even water you don't need all the time. Depends on the race.
I stopped tracking my workouts. Like I have a Garmin, and I start it and stop it, but I never look at the details ever.
Really?
Like you probably should every now and then just to see how you're doing. But I really just want to go out and run. Like nowadays, I did in the beginning. I looked at all the data.
Yeah.
But now I'm more like I'm saving the data in case I want to look at it later. But I just want to go enjoy the run.
But you're not like digging it, mining it, and you're not having a coach look through it or anything like that.
No, not that. I mean, I don't have goals right now where I need that. But I guess the point being that sometimes it's good just to go out and do your thing and enjoy it and not be metacognitive about the whole thing the whole time.
Yeah, I like that idea actually. But Megan would be proud of me hearing me say that because she's always thought I rely on data too much.
I mean, I think data is good to a point, but I also think that it can take the joy out of things sometimes.
That's a good point. I like that. Yeah. Sometimes you're so caught up in it and instead just go out and run.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think races are the same way. It's kind of like we're training for a race, which will definitely motivate you. But at some point, once you've done all the races you want to do or whatever, then you kind of wonder, what am I doing this for?
Right.
If you're not doing it for the run itself, then,
Yeah. So talking about like race strategy and stuff, I'm somebody that does walk. I know you said something about, running the whole thing, but I'm someone that does, walk a lot.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that,
yeah. Just because, my issues, I've got other issues. I just, running straight is going to hurt me. So my strategy is usually walk up hills and then go downhill as fast as I can safely, and then pretty much try to run on flats. And what do you feel about that kind of strategy?
No, I think that's the right strategy. Yeah. I mean, I think most ultra runners will tell you that, or even trail runners for that matter, even if it's not a long distance. Everyone is different. So when you say like walk the hills, it depends on the hill and depends on what you're capable of for the hill. So I don't walk all the hills. I walk the climbs where you kind of have to use your hands a little bit because it's so steep, or those.
We don't have those really down
long, here. Yeah. And downhills, when I first started running trails, my knees were really bad. I have osteoarthritis hereditary in both my knees, and it's like trending to grade 4. So it's pretty severe.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of tissue work to strengthen my glutes and my hips and my muscles, and it's not a problem. And now I can fly down the hills too, so without a problem. And so it depends. If the length of your race is 100 miles, then you're going to want to force yourself into walking,
right.
early on, so that you can. I heard somebody say it's like taking a glob of peanut butter and putting it across Wonder Bread. You know, you have to slowly spread it to get it across the other side of the bread. So
Or it's
you
going
kind
to
of got
tear
to
up. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of got to approach the race like that. So your strategy is right on. And I would say just, you know what you're capable of on a hill. If you can walk the hill as fast as you can run it and use less energy, then that's what you should do. Hands down, no matter what, even if you're feeling good, because it doesn't make sense to spend that energy when you could walk it just as fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also changes your muscle groups. Like one of the things that brought me down in 100-miler once at like mile 80 was my hip flexor got so tight I could not bring my foot forward anymore. And it's because, first of all, I wasn't trained enough for the 100 to start with, that race. But secondly, I didn't give myself enough walk breaks, and I ended up just seizing up that hip flexor. I don't know, something like that. I couldn't bend my leg forward anymore.
That hasn't happened to me on the run. Now that's happened to me on cycling where I just could not bring my leg up.
Yeah.
To that point, especially after, I know people laugh when I say hilly ride, but, there are places in Florida you can get some hills in, and you know that, but in Claremont. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
You do those loops around Sugarloaf. I mean, you can get, a few thousand feet of climbing in. And if you're not ready for it, and especially I wasn't, it got to the point where I could not bring the pedal up. So I was back to the old style biking of just pushing, and that's going to burn you out as well. But I haven't had that happen on running yet, thank God. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you walk, you can avoid it.
Yeah.
So your strategy's right on. You're mixing and walking when it makes sense.
Yeah. So what is your favorite distance to do? I mean, you've done a lot of different things. You're gonna tell me the 380-mile Vol State, right?
No. As a matter of fact, okay, so I'm learning the answer to that question by just doing different things. And I've done Vol State a few times, finished it once.
Yeah, tell us what Vol State is, though.
Oh, yeah. Vol State is a road race.
Yeah.
And I'm not a road person to start with. So let me tell you what I like about Vol State. First of all, here's what Vol State is. It's 314 miles. It starts in Missouri. You cross a ferry across the river. You go to Kentucky. You run into Tennessee. You run through Tennessee into Alabama and then into Georgia, and you end in Georgia. Yeah. There might be another something in there somewhere. I don't know. But it's 314 miles. Here's the thing about it, though. It's not staged. It's just point to point. You just run and you stop when you stop. And you make your way, and there's two categories. One category is crude, and that's what you think it is. There's a car that can follow you and give you food, water, and shelter.
Okay.
And then there's a category that's screwed. These people don't get food, don't get water, and you got to get it on your own. That means drinking out of spigots, charging your phone at car washes, sleeping under trees.
And that's, of course, what you did, right?
Yeah, and that's, well, I've never run it crude. I've only run it screwed.
Right.
So
there you go.
That appeals to me. That concept appeals to me.
Yeah, it's all on you, right?
What I don't like about it is that it's on the road. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not in the backwoods.
And that's kind of, for everybody listening. I mean, you did it last year and you did it this year, doing live Facebook as you were doing it, and we can get into this here. I mean, I had somebody comment. She wanted me to ask you this question, this insight she has. She goes, in Vol State last year, it seemed like it just beat you up physically.
Yeah.
You were down and out afterwards. You couldn't run for a while. It was a couple months, right? And this year,
I didn't recover until I'm still not recovered from last year. To be quite honest.
Yeah, it really beat you up, right?
Yeah, it did.
And we saw that when we were, watching you and all that. But and then this year, it seemed like it beat you up more mentally.
I didn't. Yeah, it really is. So I feel like I need to answer your last question because it's my OCD.
Yeah.
Best. Let me just go back. The best distance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
My favorite distance is a 50 miler.
Okay.
For just an all-out race, you can finish before dinner time. But that's just for running. But my favorite race is a stage race that goes for a week over, like, say, 150 to 175 miles. in the backwoods. That's my favorite format for a race.
Okay.
I don't care how the distance is, as long as it's over 150 miles and it's 7 days and it's self-supported, carry all your own food, and it's remote. That's my favorite format for a race. My favorite distance, though, just to run, to open it up and to actually get your body moving and do a proper race is 50 miles.
50 miles. Have you ever, I know you've done a lot of races. Have you ever thought about going up and doing that one that Megan does all the time? The one that I attempted, the Infinitus up there in Vermont?
Yeah, a guy I know from Vol State who lives here in Missouri won the 888 last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I thought about it. Doing a race this year that's similar in format. It's in November. It's in Florida.
Oh,
Fort Lauderdale. It's called the Icarus.
Yeah, the Icarus race. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 6 days and it runs around a 1K loop.
Yep. Someone sent that to me actually.
Similar. Yeah, I'm gonna see how that goes.
Yeah.
And I might consider the 888.
Yeah. It seems like something that you would like, that Infinitus race.
Yeah, I think I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let me get back to the other thing. So Vol State. This year, I didn't. So I had a bad year. So last year I went into Vol State with March, April, May, June, July, with a 4-month-old hamstring injury. Went into Vol State with that. And Vol State did beat me up. It was the heat and the sleep deprivation that beat me up. It's not the distance necessarily. Then this year, I didn't run any races this year at all. And I've been dealing with a lot of personal issues between work and other issues. And I've been mentally drained. My training has been so bad. I've been just dealing with fatigue, and it's just stress. And my training has just really been bad. And I've been thinking all year that the solution to this would be the Vol State, that I'd see all my friends, which is really one of the joys of Vol State, is seeing people that you have stuff in common with.
Right.
And then we would go out on the road together, and we would enjoy the journey. And so I'd looked forward to that. And then when I got out there, things just started falling apart. I knew I could finish it in 6 days or under, but I wasn't. And then each day that went by, I was further off from that goal. And all I could think about was the first year I ran it, when I broke or fractured or whatever my ankle. That first year, I did 80 miles on the first day, and I got to this one place 50 miles in where there's a fire station, and there was still light out, and it was still, I was just doing really well, and the whole idea was to run it. Well, this year, I got to that point. It was well into 10 or 11 at night, and things just weren't going my way. And then I just started thinking, this is going to take a toll on my body.
Yeah. And
I'm not having fun, and I'm not meeting the goal, which I know I should be able to meet. So is it worth? So, and I was just fatigued. I was just completely drained. And I'm like, and I realized I don't want to be here. I looked at it and I was sitting on a bench. Some kid was pretend kicking a dog. The stray dog came down. There's a storm rolling in. The dog was crying, wanted something to drink. They were pretending to be mean to it. I was listening to these women talking about jail, and I'm sitting out in this really remote area with this windy road with no shoulder, but like a 6-inch rumble strip. This storm's coming in, and I knew that if I walked down that road, their visibility would be so low that it wouldn't be safe. So I realized I was going to have to wait out the storm. Not everyone did. So, that's just me. I just choose safety. Other people just trudge along.
Yeah.
And I realized I'm going to have to wait this out, and I'm going to get further behind. There's more to it, but I was behind. And then I realized last year, if a storm rolled in, I'd be like, awesome, this is going to be so exciting.
Yeah, it takes the heat off, right?
Yeah, this year I was like, I don't want to be here. I looked at it, I was like, I'm going to be here another 4 or 5 days. I think I was 120 miles in.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to be here another 4 or 5 days. I could be doing X, Y, and Z. You know, last year, the only thing I wanted was to finish the race. I would have gotten hit by a car. I would have finished the race. It wasn't that I couldn't finish the race. It was that I didn't want to be there. I just didn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called the meat wagon. I was like, I'm ready to go, you know. I actually hitched a ride to a hotel back that I had already passed, which meant my race was over. Once you get in a car, you're no longer screwed, right? You're crewed at that point. So anyway, I hitched a ride back a few miles backwards to a hotel. And then I called the meat wagon, and she tried to talk me out of it. And I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And then, you know, and it was okay. I mean, I don't regret it. I have no regrets, none whatsoever, because I was being true to myself. And I don't have anything to prove. I mean, a lot of people do ultras, you know, maybe because they feel like they need to prove something to themselves or maybe to other people. I don't know. I've done all that. I'm done with having to prove stuff to myself. Can I run this? Can I do that? And I just realized, you know, if I do this, it's going to be a higher price than I want to pay. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be more injured. I'm going to be eating out of gas stations. I'm going to be eating pickles and sausage biscuit. I was done. I mean,
pickles.
I'm talking too much, but I was literally done.
Yeah, and I think it was evident for those of us watching that something was not right. And but I think that somebody with like you've got nothing to prove. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you can do this stuff. We all know you can do this stuff. So you've got nothing to prove to yourself or to anybody about that. So I think it takes somebody with a lot of experience and has been out there and has done it to know this is not working. I need to pull, you know. And I think sometimes that it takes, you know, a brave. I'll use the word brave, but I think it takes a braver person to do that than to push through and make it worse.
Yeah, it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah,
and elites do it all the time. You know,
right.
They'll be out there and they'll be like, I'm not going to hit my goal. And if I keep going, I'm just going to burn myself out when I have another race in a month that I could meet my goal. So I'm out. Out.
Yeah, I always go. I remember it was back in, and I remember when I watched it, I couldn't believe he did this, but it was during the, it wasn't, I think it was Kona. It might have been the Kona championships, the triathlon championships. And I believe it was Macca. I could be wrong, but I believe it was Macca he blew a tire. So, you know, you can't accept help from anybody. So you got to fix this tire. And of course they're using tubeless tires. So it takes a little bit more to fix that. Fixes a tire, gets back on the bike and blows another one.
Yeah.
You know, and at that point he said, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a top pro at that time. You know, he was winning these races. Right. So it took, he decided when he talked about it later, he said, I have other races coming. You know, I can't risk pushing too hard and getting myself hurt when I have other things I need to do after this. So at some point you have to know when to say that's enough. There's no use in doing this anymore. So yep. I do think it takes guts, and it takes, you know, bravery and knowledge. You know, it takes a knowledgeable racer to know when to pull.
Yeah, and then, you know, the other thing too is there's never one reason why we do anything in this activity. It's like, you know, there's so many reasons why I didn't want to be there. It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just that I was behind. It wasn't just that I had a lot of stuff going on that kept me from training well. It was everything put together, and then you just kind of realize, you know, have an epiphany.
Yeah, and it's kind of like one of the great things about ultra running and trail running is that you can get lost in your head, and that's one of the bad things too.
Yeah,
is that
exactly?
You know, it's like sometimes you don't want to be in your head too much because of other crap going on. It's like it's the last place you want to be.
And you never know what you don't always know why you do these things. Yeah. And it's important to try to figure that out. And being lost in your head really freaks you out because you have to confront questions like that.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you get to the bottom of the question, if not eternally, but for that moment. And I feel like I had that epiphany. I was lucky enough to realize sitting on that bench, I wasn't there for myself anymore. So
Right.
I needed to leave.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about, I was watching a show called Hard Knocks, and if you've never watched it, it's about the NFL, and they always focus on one team every year. And this year is the Cleveland Browns. And if you follow football, you know they were 0-16 last year. So this is a team that should be, mentally, it would be hard to get into it when you were that bad. Very few teams have gone 0-16.
Yeah.
Only 3 of them. Only 2 teams before that. So, it's as hard as going 16-0. It's hard to lose every game.
Oh yeah.
In the NFL. But it's a third-year linebacker. He got up and he said in front of the team, because he had noticed some lackadaisical efforts during the camp. He said, I want everybody to take out a piece of paper and write down their why. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Mm-hmm. Is it to take care of your family? To buy your mother a house? Is this why you want to play football? To win a championship? Whatever it is, write down your why and stick it up on your bathroom mirror, above your bed, next to your bed, wherever it is, and look at it every day. Because that's what you have to keep yourself every time that, that you're down 30-0 to the New England Patriots or whatever it is, that you have to be there for a reason. You're not going to win every game.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Dolphin.
And that's key. That is so key for things that go a long time. Like one football game is one football game, but the whole season is the whole season.
Right. You have
and
to
then
focus.
The whole career is the whole career. So
yes, exactly.
That's
right.
the why.
Right.
Yeah.
You have goals and some, and a lot of these guys, a lot of these guys in the NFL, they come from nothing, and you got to know why you're there. If you're there to take care of your family, that's fine, but take care of your family.
Right.
I don't want to get too far into that, but there were some really good things. One guy was talking to the other receivers about even spending time on Facebook. And they said, if you spend this much time on Facebook every day, and it was like 30 minutes a day, that means in a year, you've spent a month of that year on Facebook. It adds up.
Right. Everything in ultra running is little things. The word ultra running it throws you for a loop because you think it's like this epic thing. Yeah. It's like giant, like explosion or something, but it's not. It's so many tiny things. I think of it like shooting a rifle at 50 yards versus 100 yards. Mm-hmm. The further away you are, the smaller the movement, and the further you're going to be away from the target, right?
Right, exactly.
And so it's the further the distance, the larger the effort, the smaller things make a larger impact further out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a lot of little tiny things. And we were talking about, your question about wanting it. Like we talked earlier, like why people get into ultra running and stuff. Like for me, it was because I realized that running on the trails was phenomenal sensation. It was like a sensation-seeking thing. And then you start talking about running and races and heart rates and all this kind of stuff, and then you're getting further and further away from that. And then, not that that's wrong or bad, because you're going after these goals and all, but I think I reached that point where I'm kind of like, I'm not running it, I'm not doing it for what I wanted. I was too far away from that initial spark.
Yeah, you need to find the beginning again, exactly. Which is like, well, obviously on a much smaller scale, but I think that's what happened to me a couple of years ago, and I'd lost that spark. And
right.
Although I was still racing, and I think I lost it before Infinitus, to be honest, because I had been injured, and it was just like, I couldn't get this injury under control, and I attempted all these races, but my heart wasn't in it as much as it should have been, and I just burned out, and I had to really pull it back. There's a lot of other stuff going on, and we've talked offline about that stuff, but I think you have to process through it, and you come out on the other side. Hopefully you're going to be stronger on the other side, and you find that spark. And if you don't, that's fine too.
Yes.
So sometimes you just got to go run to run.
Yeah.
without any real goal in mind,
And it's okay to do it both ways, but it's also an evolution. It's like,
Yeah.
like you said, if you don't find that spark again, that's fine too. I know I will, and I kind of am again now.
Yeah. Well, you seem better mentally already to me.
Yeah,
honestly.
it was just that moment at that time. I have no regrets leaving the course. None.
No. Yeah. I think it was the right decision just watching you, and I don't think anybody felt it was the wrong decision that was watching you. We all saw it. So I want to get into like some more like pieces of wisdom from you, I guess. So if someone's new to ultra running, someone's new to trail running or ultra running, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Let's see. I would say, okay, so to the activity itself.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, one piece of advice I would say: set the right time frame for your expectations.
Okay.
So I would, in other words, be patient. If you're new to running in general and you want to do ultras, you're looking at a couple years until you can do these things.
Are you saying not to be like John, to jump from 10K to 100 miles?
Well, it's not that you can't do it.
Yeah.
I just don't want you to quit because you're not where you want to be in a month or 2 months or even a year. If your dream is to run that 100-miler, you can certainly do it with a marathon training. But I would say set your expectations further out, and just really be patient. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want you to get hurt.
Right.
Both mentally and physically. There's discouragement mentally, but then physically, you're going to get injured. So if you try and do too many miles, so, I know a guy that is a strong marathon runner, friend of mine, and I showed up at a 100-mile race once, and he was there, and I didn't expect to see him. I was like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
He just said, I'm going to run 100 miles. And he ran 70 miles, and he was ahead of me, and he did really well.
Mm-hmm.
But he hurt himself bad.
Yeah.
He got really hurt bad. And he was a strong marathoner, way faster than me, and had been running marathons longer than I'd been doing long-distance running. So the idea that you can go out there and do these things and meet a performance goal that you want to meet is great, but I would say that I would want you to set your time frame realistically.
Okay. What would you tell the same runner about halfway through that 50-mile race?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. You're talking about a race. Sorry. Yeah. Well, if you're in a race, I would say that you need to put your mind in the right place, and you need to be thinking, first of all, when you're out there, if it's a 50-miler, you need to be saying to yourself as a mantra, maybe, I'm going to run all day. I'm going to run all day. I'm going to run all day. I don't want you thinking about miles. Think of it in terms of, I'm going to run all day. I'm going to run all day. I'm going to run all day.
Okay.
When it's, and so if the race starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, I just threw that out there because it's a round number.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
put it in your head that you're going to be out there till
hours.
6. Yeah.
Take something till 10 hours later and say, I'm gonna run until that time or whatever. If 10 hours is your goal, it's a trail race or whatever. But I would say that you need to be thinking in terms of time, not distance. And to your point earlier, you need to expect it to hurt and just accept it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you said that, because I think my training kind of turned around when I was trying to go longer. Was I had to stop thinking about miles, and that's what I did, and that's how. And it was easier to get my head around. I have to run for 3 hours,
right?
Than it is I have to run for 20 miles.
Right. You definitely don't want to be thinking about miles.
Right. And when I changed my thought process on that, it was much easier for me to do it. It was much easier for me to even plan it in my head, because when I was thinking of miles, I said, God, I could be out here all day, or if I knew I was going to get up on Sunday, say it's during football season, and I know the Dolphins are on at 1 o'clock. Well, if I go out there at 6 o'clock, I got 5 hours. I'm gonna run for 5 hours.
And that's if it's your first race. Later on, like for instance, what I do now is like I used to sometimes run commute to work, and it's about 8 to 10 miles depending on the route I take. Let's say it's 8 miles. I always think in terms of how many runs to work is it You know,
Yeah.
it's usually one run to work to the next aid station.
we're so alike, Chris.
Yeah,
Because we have where we did that run with Jenny at Flatwoods is a 7-mile loop. And
right.
That's exactly how I think of things. So it's a loop. It's a 7-mile loop. So,
yeah, it's like one loop at the yeah, exactly. Think of a trail and think it's one loop on that trail or something like that. But in the beginning, I would say think of it in terms of time, because miles will really psych you out.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, and this is probably even more important, and you will have gotten this in your training, but maybe not. You're going to enter a place and you're going to want to quit.
Yeah.
And everything's going to hurt so bad you're going to think it's over. That is temporary. You have to take my word for it. It will pass. You'll come out the other side of that.
Yeah.
And you'll feel decent again. I won't lie to you and say you're going to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But then realize in those good moments that you will also feel bad again soon.
Yeah.
If you just have to know that that's normal, and that horrible, horrible dark place is going to pass.
There's a video that comes out. Well, it's been out for a long time, but it usually starts rearing its head around marathon season, called Marathon Thoughts. Have you ever seen that on YouTube? You need to Google it if you haven't.
That sounds good.
It's called Marathon Thoughts, and all it is I usually put it out there at least once a year, but it's like you're looking at the guy's face and he's running, and it shows him like through the marathon of things that are going through his head. He's not talking; it's just you can hear what's in his head. And there's one.
Oh, that's neat.
And there's one that's like about. I'm making up numbers, but I'm saying 7 miles. Saying, "Oh my God, I can't make this. Is there a cab?" He's looking around. Is there a cab somewhere?
Oh, that's good.
And then he said, and then it's like mile 10. Ooh, second wind. He's like, second wind, baby. And then like a mile later, oh my God, I'm going to die.
That is so good.
But it showed the progress through. There's one. It's like my nipples are bleeding. How am I going to feed my children? My poor babies.
There's so much around that's good advice. I mean, if you're I forgot what I was gonna say. If you're I forgot what I was gonna say. No, but there's so many little things with regards to going in a long race. I remember now. Like, every single thing is solvable. Like it's really hard not to give all of this advice. I mean, it's hard to give just one piece of advice, because I'm assuming I'm talking to someone who's doing their first race. Okay. So right. If you've done these before, I'm insulting your intelligence maybe, but everything is solvable, but it won't seem that way when it happens to you.
Right.
So you're going to get sick because your nutrition is off, or you're not used to exerting that long. I don't know, whatever. You're going to have stomach issues, GI issues, or whatever. It's going to seem like it's permanent, but it's not. And this is what's the beauty of it. If you're running to finish, take a minute.
Yeah.
Just stop, lay down, close your eyes, do whatever. Just take a minute. If you're running for performance and you're an elite runner or someone like that, GI issues might be the end of your race, because it's going to slow you down for 30 minutes and you've already slipped into the 20th spot or something.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just throwing junk out. But if it's a long distance, you can get through it. You can let it pass. Yeah. Walk a little bit. Stop a little bit. Bottom line is, every single ailment is solvable to an extent. Obviously, if you broke something, it's not. But
right.
But the idea that your race is over because of a GI issue or a blister. Okay, if the whole skin of your foot comes off, that's another story. I think you know where I'm going with this, though.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a long distance, like Vol State, for instance. And I know your first ultra would be Vol State, but you could sleep in a hotel for an entire day. Yeah. And I did that this year. I was having some really bad heat problems, and I decided I would stop and just sleep a full night, and just I would suck it up and not be in the place I wanted to be, but at least feel okay.
Yeah.
And you can do that. You can just take a day off. It's not gonna.
It's about It's
not gonna kill you. So if you have GI issues, just stop. If you're really tired and you need to sleep, stop. Ask the aid station person to wake you up in 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and sleep. You will be amazed at how good you feel if you do that.
Well, I've found like something I've discovered over the years is that if my heart rate gets out of control, there are times when I'll start a run and it feels like I can't breathe. My heart rate is going so high. If I stop at that point and let it come down, then it's like a whole different race or a whole different run for me. But if I try to power through that, it sucks the whole time. But I've done this, I know people, I won't even walk. I'll stop. And I sit there and I wait for my heart rate to get back down into the 120s or 130s, and then I'll start again. And it's totally different. Feel like it's rejuvenating. But,
and to an extent, all of that stuff, if you run into your problem and you think to yourself, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
Think of 3 things and do one of them.
Yeah. So I got some other questions here that weren't on the list.
Okay.
I threw them at Megan off the cuff, and so I'm going to throw them at you too.
Great.
These are a little bit more fun. I think you kind of answered the first one earlier, but
okay.
What's in your drop bag? What do you, if you have a drop bag, what would you have in it?
Oh, when I first started doing this, I was very OCD and I had everything. I had the entire Red Cross and some see-through thing all organized and all that stuff. But now, I rarely get blisters, so I just have a little moleskin, some scissors, a hypodermic needle, and a lighter.
Okay.
And that's my blister kit.
Yeah.
And other than that, I really don't have that much. I might have, depending on the race and the climate, and other people are going to say I'm a wuss for it, I might have some waterproof socks.
Oh,
and I say that
because
I had issues where the bottom of my feet did come off from something, and
the skin just slithered off it, right?
Yeah, and that was because of issues I had from water and everything. So I learned something there, and that's really it. I wouldn't have much more than that because presumably I'm getting food and water when I need it.
Okay. So what's one item you would always have in your race? Like one thing you will not go out there without, besides water and stuff like that. It's like what other item?
Well, again, a lot of people will probably think it's bad. I like to have an iPod.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm running for 3 days, I want some entertainment.
I can tell you what Megan's answer was.
What's that?
Cell phone.
Yeah, cell phone too. Yeah. I like the cell phone idea because I can listen to audiobooks too.
Yeah.
I don't. There's audiobooks on an iPod. It's hard to pick up where you left off.
That's true. That's true. And so the final one, and I like this. This kind of came to me at the end when I was talking to her. So, and I liked her answer to it. I'm interested to see what yours is. What is your go-to item when you're bonking?
So I don't really bonk.
Yeah.
It's funny. When I used to bonk, it would have been like a gel or something like that.
Like a gel.
Yeah.
So I told her mine was a Coke. It's like if I get a Coke or cold watermelon, if I can get my hands on that, totally. Yeah. I don't know should I tell you? Yeah, because hers will come out before yours, so I can tell you. Hers was Fritos.
Oh, Fritos. Yeah. That's something that, I live my life trying not to eat that stuff, that even when I'm in a race, I deny it of myself. But I didn't in Ball State, and I ate a lot of potato chips, and they were so good. They
do taste good when you're hot and sweaty.
Yeah.
The few times that I've taken potato chips on the trail, oh my God.
Potato chips, those are really good because of the salt, but also dill pickles.
Dill pickles, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything like that. So, so you're gonna come to Fire on the Mountain in November with us?
You know what? It just so happens that's the time of the Icarus, I believe.
Oh, that's right. It is the same time. That's right.
The Icarus is on the 10th, and I saw that and I thought, wow, what are the chances of that? I think they're close together.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same weekend, but I think it's a weekend apart or something like that.
I would love to, though. I mean, I still have my family still lives in Florida, but I don't know if I could do the vacation, like the whole 6-day Icarus race, and then add more on to it.
Yeah, because you got to work, right?
Yeah.
You got that stupid thing called work.
I would love to, though. And next year, if there's something going on like that, I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to get as many people. We're trying to make it like a teamE4E thing, to see how many people we can get up there. I don't even know if I can get up there, to be honest with you, but Rob will be there.
I definitely want to do more of that. If the Icarus weren't in the way, I'd be there.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, Chris, I appreciate you coming on and taking part in this Ultra August thing we're doing here.
I love it. I hope I didn't depress you, and I hope I didn't talk to you.
No, I think it's good. I mean, it's real, and I think that's what's important.
No, I still love ultra running, guys. It's still a good thing. Everybody should do it. Blah blah blah. But
I'm glad to hear that you're. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're starting to come around, and I'm not saying. Well, obviously you got Icarus on, so you've got races ahead of you.
I have a very extremely ridiculously naively stupid goal for Icarus. I won't say what it is, but I'm really gonna work hard.
But if I don't get to get up there to Maryland for Fire in the Mountain, I might be able to get to Icarus. So if you're down there, then I might be able to get down there. That's a lot easier for me. That's only a few hours.
I mean, if anybody wants to come out and pace me a while, I welcome the company.
Yeah. So I may do that. That will be definitely a different, easier for me to get down there for sure. So,
that would be awesome. I'm looking forward to the whole event. It's going to be a great time.
All right. So once again, thanks a lot, Chris. And
yes,
we'll be in contact. Okay.
All right, John. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.